then myself, my name is Alan Moorman. I'm going to be supporting some of the facilitation today, along with Tembela, and I'll let Tembela introduce herself as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Tembela. I work for Maniko, and yeah, I'm one of the facilitators for today.
Okay. So before I ask Michael and Dudu to introduce themselves, I just want to talk very briefly about what we're doing today. So when Ashley first spoke to us about this, he was really keen to hear the stories of the people who are actually doing the work. And we went about trying to figure out what we might want to do in order to have this kind of conversation. Like he said in his introduction, this is very much a conversation between people who are actually delivering on our solidarity work, community-based organizers or people in community-based organizations who are working directly with others. We feel that it's a missing voice in the broader conversation in the country. So a lot of the conversations tend to happen between people who are experts or academics or who are famous for various reasons. But very rarely are we able to talk about what's actually happening in our communities. And even less often do we talk about how we work with our communities or with the communities that we live in. So this is a series of conversations that we're going to have around particular activities that people have undertaken, either during COVID or post-COVID, or things that will happen in the future. And we want to focus in on the people doing the work, what they did, why they did it, and what lessons then can we draw from that for the rest of our work across the country. So you're all invited into this conversation to talk very directly to your own experience. So once Michael and Dudu have presented, we want to shift the conversation to you in the space to start asking the questions of you. Can you relate to the things that Michael and Dudu are putting forward? What recommendations can you make to them to improve their work? What have you learned from the conversation that they've just had with Tembela? And then ultimately, just to try to collect that into some kind of document that we will then share with everybody so that we all have the lessons in our hands, and to share those lessons with others who are not necessarily in the room. So very, very practical conversations. We want to talk about our lived experience. We want to talk about the issues and challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis and how we're overcoming them. And Dudu and Michael's conversation just helps us frame that in a particular area of work. Okay, so that's my 2-minute introduction. What I'd like to do is hand over to Dudu and Michael to introduce themselves, and then to Tembela, who will be facilitating the conversation for us. So, Dudu and Michael, all yours.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dudu Khadebe. I work for an organization called CREATE-CBR, and I am based in Pietermaritzburg. And yeah, I'm with my colleague, Michael, my former colleague and comrade, Michael. And also just to let you know that in the room, we've got our comrades, Usima Sikakane, Smangaliso Skakane, and Untwentle Majosi. We did ask for permission to have them in the room. So yeah, they'll be listening in. Michael.
Yeah, my name is Michael Madinga. I work for PACSA, based in Pietermaritzburg. So as you can see me, there's a Michael Madinga name. So my comrades are using my phone on the other side. So they are just mute, going to listen to what we are saying. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dudu and Michael. For those who are listening, we are going to, the way we are going to facilitate this session is that we're going to have an interview with Michael and Dudu. And I would actually suggest that you unmute yourselves, because I know sometimes when you want to speak and we have to start now unmuting, it becomes a problem. So we're just going to have an interview about the work that they had done during the lockdown. And then, as Alan had indicated, once they are done with the interview, we'll open up a space for you to ask for questions of clarity to them. And then after that, we open up a full discussion where you bring in your own stories. So thank you so much for the two of you for agreeing to be part of this discussion today. So we know that you have gone through a food drive during the lockdown. Can you tell us a bit about what you did and what inspired you to do the work that you are doing?
Okay, thanks, Tembela. So, comrades, I think what was important for us, our background is in social justice, and our interest as well as activists was to explore what the impact of COVID-19 was going to be on the marginalized, as we work with primarily marginalized groups, PACSA, with young people and women and so on, and CREATE works with disabled people. So we also looked for other organizations that were going to work with us, and we invited, initially before even the lockdown, we decided to bring together a few comrades from various organizations in Pietermaritzburg to reflect on the impact of the of COVID-19, first of all, on the marginalized. Now, once the lockdown came, we then found out that there's even going to be deeper challenges that are going to impact the marginalized. So we then sat down and said, what can we do as social justice activists to do something around the issues that had emerged when we first asked the question of the impact of the marginalized people. So we began together a collective, if I could call it that, called the Pietermaritzburg COVID-19 Consent Collective, where these organizations came together and wanted to work together on addressing the issues that we're seeing and we're perceiving are going to be coming. And when the lockdown came, then we felt that it would be important to look at the issue of food, because this was going to be the issue that would impact the marginalized the most. So that was why we decided on the food drive, primarily because we felt that that was the most emerging issue, and it was going to impact the marginalized people. And when we talk about that, we also talk about young people who are on the streets, sex workers as well. So it was a broad group of marginalized people within the Pietermaritzburg area. I'll hand over to Michael to maybe also comment.
As the studio said, we work for this organization who has been in the forefront in the fighting for marginalized. So we work also when there is a rupture. So for us, COVID-19 was a rupture. So for us to run and hide, as everyone was running to hide, was something that was uncalled for. So we, as she said, we met, and when we met, we thought we were going to see which statement are we going to issue and looking at the issues. But as we sat down and analyzed the terrain, and we saw that what concerns us, what concerns people on the street is not COVID-19 now, it's how are they going to get their next meal. So that's why the food drive was born. So we will continue to tell you then how did we then decided to do it, but it was born through reflection and looking at are we really concerned about the sickness? Are we really concerned where is the next meal going to come from? Thank you.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting, because the way you're looking at this is you're saying, in a way, when everybody else is worried about COVID-19, for a lot of people, COVID-19, yes, it's an issue, but more than that, the food was a big issue for a lot of people. I remember hearing people, I think it was in Cape Town, saying it looks like they will die out of hunger before they die out of COVID. When we talked with you, you mentioned that food parcels, in a way, is not the kind of work that your organizations do. But you still went ahead anyway and went into this kind of a drive. So what was different for you? I mean, why did you go for a food drive? And what was different about the initiative that you went through?
So, comrades, I think what was clear for us, and it was intentional, that we are not charity organizations. We facilitate development as organizations, and we felt that for us this is an opportunity for solidarity with the marginalized, to make sure that the marginalized people in Pietermaritzburg and surrounding areas, as you rightly say, Thembela, are not going to die because they've been told to stay at home, because we felt that some of them even didn't have homes to go to in the first place. And we knew also that a lot of them did not, even before COVID-19 came, they did not have food. And so we felt that looking at the issue of food and making sure that people are alive, basically, is quite an important issue to look at. And so this was for us an opportunity to be in solidarity with people who were panicking about a disease that they did not know about, because this for many people was foreign to them, this COVID-19. So it was an approach also to, if when we talk about it, we'll also clarify how we did it, because the way we did it was that we also went into people's houses, which was also a risk for us as organizations and as individuals who were involved, comrades who were involved, because it meant that we could contract COVID-19 in the process of doing this work, but intentionally we decided that we're going to deliver food into people's houses. So it was also an opportunity for people-to-people connection, because the thing about this disease as well is that it was isolating people, and so it was an opportunity to look at how can we deal with this isolation that could also lead to other issues that could be about psychosocial issues as well. And so it was a way of reaching out and also finding out how people are doing. So it wasn't just about food, it was finding out how people are living and speaking to them about how they were experiencing the lockdown, and also seeing how we can be of assistance if we could be. So it was a multi-layered approach for us.
Now, if I can add on how did we do it, and everyone will remember that when COVID-19 hits, no one had a budget of doing food or of doing house to house. When we sat down and reflected, we thought, let's just call on ourselves, call on the staff members to donate team staff, to donate whatever they have that we will take. And then with young comrades that we have, they said, let's create a poster on WhatsApp. And then the poster on WhatsApp, we said whoever who has food at home, because people were not allowed to leave their houses, we are going to come and collect it. So remember, we had no mask, no permits, no everything. We looked at the system and we saw the cracks within the system, that the police themselves, they don't know what to look for. But we left our houses and we went to people's houses. We collected the food stuff that they can. Before we know, we had piles and piles of food in our office. And then we had, and the young comrades again with social media created posts on Facebook So Comrade contributed. Before we know, we had something to do. And then now the issue was, how are we going to do it? How are we going to take it to people's houses? So again, we use personal cars, and board members, some of our organization board members gave us their cars while they were sitting on their homes. They gave their resources for us to continue to do work. Thank you.
Well, that's actually quite interesting in that a lot of people, for instance, in terms of how they've been responding, especially those that were also involved in food, what they were doing was really more just drop the food and they just leave, or they just drop the money. But I think you raised some very important things that we have seen coming up quite a lot around this time: the issue of isolation, the issue of psychosocial issues that people have suffered during this time. But I also like the fact that you're raising issues about you risking your own lives, but also over and above that, taking your own resources before you can even ask people to support. You also brought in your own responses. So this sounds quite like an innovative approach. I wonder whether you could share a little bit with us about what you found as a major impacts of what you did, both to the people that you were reaching out to and also to you as the development practitioners.
So for us, I think what was quite interesting, I think I'll start with one of the major impacts that this had is really the fact that we're able to connect with people. For us, the impact of solidarity was quite apparent, because even when we got into people's houses, because we didn't also just go to one area. We've so far reached more than 600 people, and it may seem like a small number, but also it's small because of the approach that we used, because we went house to house, so it's exhausting work. But the solidarity that was created in this, the people-to-people connection, the understanding that because we come from different organizations, as I said earlier on, with PACSA, for instance, we had comrades who had never interacted with people, or minimally in any case, with people with disabilities and extreme disabilities. But then you found young people who got involved in this work, and they were able to understand what it means to interact with severely disabled people, people who had no limbs and so on. And so it was a learning for our comrades that were with us. The impact of bringing in our own family members meant that also there is a growing number of cadres who are understanding why we're doing what we're doing and appreciating this work that we are doing. So the building of cadres was also quite critical for us, especially young people and some older people who joined us as well, people who would not have been part of this work before, they joined this work. And the last thing that I would mention is also the networking, because this work began just between the organizations, PACSA and CREATE. But we found along the way that because people heard about what we're doing, that we got people from Solidarity Fund asking us to assist with the distribution of food. We got connected with organizations like Wonderbank, who were interested, and so there was this aspect of the environment as well, because Wonderbank said, look, we can connect with this, because if we give Wonderbank as part of the food parcels, then we can be able to also enable fuel and so on to be saved. So we felt that there were all these multiplier and snowballing effects to this. So we got people who are working with small-scale farmers, organizations working with small-scale farmers wanting to work with us. So the networks became broader. So we feel that we created the path as we walked it. So there wasn't a pre-planned approach of how things are going to pan out. But the path has been created, and we believe that there's more to learn in this, and there's a lot also that can be done. Thanks.
While this today has almost covered it all, but for me, what I want to stress on is the power of people working together. So it started within the office, and I would like even now to mention Ecto Bumbano, that when we made a call to Ecto Bumbano, to Ashley and Zanele, also they contributed into all what we are counting now. Ecto Bumbano came into our assist. People as far as from Facebook, as far as Sweden and other, they throw their 2 rounds and 5 rounds and 10 rounds. And as I mentioned, the snowballing effect of it. So we had, I think government or whoever no one has done the food parcel that is composed of nutritious, environmental friendly as ours. We had fresh vegetables from small-scale farmers, of which we provided market for small-scale farmers. Now, towards the end of our campaign, we used the small bakkies, omalume, who are transporting kids to school because they are out of work. So we used them also to distribute food. By then, we also gave them
Money.
Food on the table. So small-scale farmers, omalume, and we brought food to the household. So all these, when we are working together, really we achieved a lot than we have even anticipated.
But gosh, that's really encouraging. I mean, when you hear about the kind of impacts, 2 small organizations coming together and able to do so much within such a small space of time, the power of people working together, I like that. But also like what Tutu is saying as well, or the idea of learning along the way, because sometimes it happens that even when you can see what needs to be done, sometimes we worry about how are we going to do it, and we get stopped from doing that which we believe we can actually do. So it's really encouraging to hear how you went about. I'm sure this must have been, I mean, I think if you've already mentioned that it was exhausting. I'm sure you came across other challenges along the way, and perhaps surprises as well. So if you were to talk to us a little bit about the lessons that you learned out of this work, what would you say have been the lessons? And again, as we talk about the lessons, please have a reflect as well on the lessons to you as a development practitioner. And the reason why I'm saying this is because many times as practitioners, we tend to divorce ourselves from the work that we're doing when we are in actual fact part of the work. So can you share some highlights in terms of the lessons that you drew from this work?
For me, as Sister has mentioned, that we've been working with CREATE. CREATE, their constituency is more of people living with disabilities. So in our kind of work, we don't need day in, day out with people who are living with disabilities. So for me to be exposed or to work, first, we had team members who lived with disabilities. So as much as I wanted to do quick, we had to cater for the team members whom we were going with, showing us houses where people living with disability lived. So for me, I'm like, you should have left you at home, Mom. And then she said, but I want to be part of it. And for me, I look at, now am I discriminating that she should, because she's now delaying everything. The walk from another house to another house takes like 30 minutes. And for me, I want to be quick. And then I learned myself, no, I need to be tolerant. Even on the houses where we arrived, I wanted to play with kids. I play, to remember social distancing, I play and I will throw the kids up, but kids living with disability, I can't live anyhow. But I don't want also to be seen discriminating. So again, for me, I was sensitized on the work that other organizations are doing. And then coming back now into the admin of everything. Now we are struggling with administration. Remember, we used monies and so now the administrators are back to the office and they are looking for all the slips. And so again, there are learnings that in terms of accounting for every, it was time of emergency, yes, but we need to account to every cent that came through our coffers. So those are some of the learnings, but let me give it to Sister.
Maybe I just mention one thing.
Sorry, before you come in, can you also, perhaps in your reflection, as you think about the lessons, perhaps you also think about the lessons around organizing and solidarity work. So yeah, if in your reflection, you could actually bring that angle as well. Sorry.
Okay. So I wanted to talk about the value of intersectionality, because for me it became quite apparent, just in terms of not just the organizations but the issues that the various organizations deal with and they tackle. And for me, it became clear that intersectionality is real in the work that we are doing, and we cannot be working in silo. So in terms of just the lessons that have emerged for me is that, and then maybe the other thing that I could mention as well, Thembela, is that you'll remember Michael mentioned the fact that when we started, we sent out a request that we're requesting people to donate food and money so that we can be able to either take the food and distribute it and then use the money to buy what other things that were not in the food that that was donated. What was surprising for us is that sending out of that request for donations actually gave us a list of recipients, and that was unintended because we then got a long, I mean, our phones were busy. It was like a call center where people were asking for food. And so again, it showed us that people are desperate. And I think 80%, if not even more, maybe about 90% of the people who asked for the food were genuinely in need of the food. And so when we started as well, we did not have a list of where we're going to take the food, but doing this work also gave us a list of people who would take the food to. So for me, again, it talks to how this was organized and how also we worked because we felt that there was a need, but we did not wait for funding and to write proposals. We used what we have to get this done.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, I just want, again, thank you so much for that. I want to bring you back again, the two of you, into, again, how this work, the way you did this work, how it transformed you as development practitioners. I know I hear from Michael that one of the big things for him was the sensitization on the realities of other people, because sometimes in our work we tend to be very narrow-minded, and we actually forget that there are a lot of intersectionalities in what we are doing. So there's that element of how it sensitized you around the realities of the other people. Is there any other way in which you would say you were transformed? I mean, when you look back at that moment, when you started this work and where you are at right now, would you say there's a change in you?
Well, look, I think for me, it made us, it
I'm
helped.
putting you on the spot.
No, it helped me because I was critical. I was critical of people who do food. I felt like, you know, that it's very narrow, but it made us realize actually when you go to places like Waswaimane or a trust feed, and you see that, you know, if you go to rural areas, my goodness, people are struggling. And so it transformed me to actually say that there is a need, there is space for people who are doing that, even though it may not be enough. Maybe people can then or other organizations can come in. I can't be judgmental.
Yeah.
Also, it has softened my stance also against food parcels. Professionally, I work with farmers. I provide trainings and in the sense of give a man a rod and learn how to fish in that sense, rather than giving a fish. But COVID-19 showed me that also the fish does assist. If you have a fish already caught, take it to someone who needs it. So this thing of don't give a man a fish. COVID-19 taught me that I should give a fish. Fish is needed somewhere.
That's actually very interesting. In the sense that, you know, sometimes we look at what we are doing and we think it's the only best way of doing things. And I think what I'm hearing from you is that actually what you walk away from this with is that actually there are different ways of looking at things. And I think more than anything, the need to be agile and be flexible and go with the time sometimes is actually very important. So we can not just stick around and say this is how we do things. I think I'm gonna move over to the participants, because I think we spent quite a lot of time on the introduction, and perhaps later on you may want to talk a little bit about again, I wish to prod you a little bit more in terms of what this taught you about organizing and solidarity work. I'm not sure if I really had enough of that. You are both on mute.
Yeah, I'm saying let's move over to participants.
The participants, okay.
We'll add as they ask questions, also
Okay.
as we reflect as we go.
Okay, great. So, Alan, I'm not sure whether there are any comments on the chat, and then perhaps we can read those and then invite the participants for questions of clarity.
Yeah, so we don't have any questions on the chat, and just maybe for those of you who don't know, there's a little button should be at the bottom of your screen that's labeled chat, and that allows you to type in questions as well, or comments or whatever. But I think just to say that a few people have said that the input has been very inspiring. It's amazing how a small initiative grows organically and leads to such great work. Great lessons here. What I'm hearing is the importance to start something. Start, and you never know how far it can go. So I think very positive feelings about the fact that you guys jumped in and got started, and it's had a great result. So that's the sort of kind of comments that we're seeing there. And I think now we're opening to the floor for questions, comments. I think the easiest way to signal that you want to talk is to just put your video on. So if you go onto video, then we'll take that as a signal that you want to ask a question. Okay.
Please unmute yourself.
Okay, ma'am. may I go ahead and ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say, I really want to thank these people for doing so much for what they did. One of the questions that I have, which I hope will be taken in the spirit that I'm saying it, is what about the sustainability of these, initiatives? Because my worry was with our own initiative, once, like you rightly say, the fish is given and it has to be given when it's needed. We always say we have to teach people how to fish, but in this space, obviously, it wasn't needed. But after COVID and after everything, or not after COVID, after the emergency issues have been dealt with, how do you see yourself sustaining this community who now obviously has been given, some lifeline? Because I find myself asking this question. We ourselves have gone out, given food parcels, came back feeling, well, it's not enough, but it was enough for the time. But now, how do we go forward?
Can I maybe respond, Tamela?
Yes, go ahead, Tutu.
Okay, so I think what is important for comrades to understand is that both organizations, PACSA and CREATE, work in Pietermaritzburg. So we work in the area, we are familiar with the areas that we worked in. And the way that we worked as well was to connect with people that we work with that are in those areas as well. So the way of the ongoing sustainability of this work is that it's an area, so we did not just come, for instance, if we were to go to Soweto and do this work, it wouldn't be sustainable because it's in a context where we don't work, but we worked in an area where we work, and it also gave us an opportunity to also see possibilities of what more we can do in those particular areas that we went to. So it will be sustained in that way. But the other thing that I want to mention is that part of our reflection is that there is something to be done around the food system. And so we're working with other organizations now to look at how the food system is going to work. And the proposal that we're putting on the table and what we want to do, particularly with the small scale farmers, is to start a market that is run by the small scale farmers themselves, so that they can be able to control, because the markets that are established by the municipalities in various localities are not useful for small scale farmers, and they are not accessible, they are exploitative. But we want to start something that is going to be led by small scale farmers, supported by ourselves as well. So we see a next step to this. So we didn't just end with dropping food. So we continue to work with the young people who, some of them received the food that we've been working with, the disabled people that we're working with, who we believe that there's work that, and in any case, outside of COVID-19, we do work with them. So that's the sustainability aspect of this. Of course, there will be additional things that we have learned, and we may feel that, okay, there's an area where we did not reach and we need to actually reach because of what we have seen along the way.
Thanks, that's
Thank
helpful
you.
to do. Yeah, is there somebody else who wants to raise a question to Dudu and Michael?
Yeah, Simon here. I don't know if you can hear me,
Yes,
comrades.
I can hear you, Simon.
Okay. Thanks, comrades, for this meeting. It's very educational, and I'm learning a lot and also getting to know what has been happening in communities where you comrades work. So I would also like to ask a question that relates to that issue of saying you need and what is available, because it's kind of difficult to get those things to match. You'll find that there's a bigger need out there, and what is available cannot meet that need. So how were the comrades dealing with that challenge? Because even the government, when they tried to distribute food parcels, many people were saying, no, we do not get food parcels from government. They did not reach some of the people who were needing them the most. So, yeah, for the comrades in Pietermaritzburg, how were you dealing with those issues without causing a strain or a conflict within the communities, whereby other people will say they are not getting because they are marginalized and others, are getting? Yeah, that is my question.
Can I answer, Tembela?
So I just want to check, perhaps we can take the last question of clarity, and then I will hand over to, is any other to share? Okay, it looks like we have enough. Oh, okay.
Greetings once more again, comrades. No, my question, I think it looks like similar to the last caller, but I just wanna know to the comrades that how did they make sure that the food parcels that they were distributing, that they reach the right people, they reach their destination? How did they stop corruption? Because we know that we saw on the news here and there that people are complaining about corruption. So how did they make sure that the food parcels reach the right people or reach the right destination, so that everyone cannot complain that they didn't get anything? So how do they monitor that the food parcel reach the right people? Thank you.
Thanks. So go ahead, Tutu and Michael, and then after you've responded, Alan will take over.
Thank you. I think the questions are almost similar. As alluded before, that we didn't have any list of people to give. So we publicized our numbers asking for donations, but in return, we got calls from people who wanted food. So also we work with community partners. So we tapped in our old networks, people whom we work with, and also the list that we collected from people who were genuinely asking. Okay, and we were not sending people to, like councillors will do, send their friends to collect the list. We didn't have even a prior list. So we have communities that we work with, whom we made sure it was deliberate that we are not working with councillors, we are not working with any ward committees. We rather work with healthcare workers, we work with CCGs, we work with, so we identified people who are going to take us. And even when we are delivering the food parcel, we don't come carrying, and then we knocked the house, we went in, we are doing our own assessment if this household is a household in need. So we will do that, and then we will satisfy ourselves. There was no one sitting in the office. Everyone was out when we buy and construct the food parcel, because they were like very, very concise plan. What do we buy? What do we need? And then we come back and reflect if whatever that we provided meets the need of the people. So we made sure there was no corruption, and we eliminated councillors and all political connected people. So that's how we did it.
And maybe just to add a little bit, Tembela, I think what was also critical for us is what Michael is mentioning, this idea of going house to house and I mean, someone else may decide that maybe it wasn't the best way of doing it, but for us, it helped us to connect with people, but also to assess intentionally whether this particular household is really deserving. Because if you stand at a hall or at a church, you are not able to see whether someone is really in need or not. So for us going into the houses, there are some houses where we went and we turned around because we could see that this household is really not in need as maybe the next door neighbor. So we could actually go in there, and we don't say we're coming to bring food. We come in and we have a conversation. And if we see that there's nothing there, we then look around as well to see who else in this neighborhood is in need, or which household looks like it is in need. And again, we walk in. So there was an assessment, and there was a prior thinking as we go inside, that we don't come in carrying food. So that for us was a way of doing it. Of course, also it wasn't. It's possible that there will be issues where people will feel aggrieved that they did not get food, and it's natural when you deal with food. I can't also remember how many times where we had to tell people, no, you're not going to get the food, or in the way that they wanted to get it. So there are times where we did say it's not possible, and it's not comfortable, but it became necessary as well. So, you know, there are people who might say that they did not get the food because you know, that they feel that they deserve it, but it was our own assessment. So that sense of agency on our part as well was quite critical, that it was our decision based on what we are assessing and our own criteria as well, because we had a criteria of who was going to be receiving the food. Thanks.
Thank you, Dudu. So this part of the conversation, what we'd like to ask is from everybody to reflect a little bit on the story that you've heard. And we've got a particular question from Ashley in the text box. Ashley's asking, have you done something in your community that didn't need lots of money, or that didn't involve another big organization? So it doesn't have to be about food, but are there other examples of where you just started something and it had a big impact in your community? And that's open to everybody. So if anybody would like to share an example of a similar type of activity from their organizations. Martha.
Yes. In our area from Fisher, luckily with Food Parcel, we have 3 organizations around us that are dealing with it. And this is our network organizations. So with the Food Parcel thingy, we never had that much problem because we knew we had the resources for that. So what we did in our organization, in a normal status without COVID-19, we ran our 2 Saturdays workshops that talks to the right to information, where we inform our communities about their rights and we consult with them on the 2 Saturdays. So what we did new, obviously we have a list of all the people that we always invite through WhatsApp and SMS. We took the very same channel and use it, continue with the training of the right to information. We have date of list annually on those 2 Saturdays with the different topics. So we took all those 2 topics and continue educating people through WhatsApp and SMS with the very same group. And it helped us to continuously get in touch with our clientele, also consulting with them privately on not on a group setup, but on a site WhatsApp.
Thank you, Martha. Is there anybody else with examples?
Simon here.
Hi, Simon.
Yes. Yeah, I think in our case, like we link up with communities in mining areas So as the lockdown was like hitting many communities members, so some of our partner community-based organizations, they also like felt a need of doing something. So, and then we have our WhatsApp group where we discuss about things that are happening in communities. So we use some of those platforms to share ideas and with what is happening in different communities. So the community members would say, in my community, we are trying to do this and this and this. So I think that assisted us even to say, how can we help? And when they were like requesting to be assisted with some of the documents that they need to submit to the organizations that were ready to finance the distribution with formulating those documents and making sure that the documents are in a way that those donors need them to be, because as the comrades indicated that even though it has been like a kind of an emergency interventions that had to be done, but there are still these other processes that need to be in place, like a need to account for the funds that were raised or for the food that was distributed or the monies that were used. So we assisted in that way of kind of saying, okay, we can assist with formulating documents and having back and forth communication until the documents were in the right place. I think this comes from an understanding that sometimes we find that activists might not have time or might not have resources to be like doing things like documents, but yeah, we also feel that we can assist as much as we can, even encouraging discussions and sharing of ideas.
Thank you, Simon. Is there anybody else that would like to add?
Let me come in again.
Yes,
do you hear
yes,
me?
we can.
Yeah, comrades, in our area, we like due to the lack of resources, we didn't do much to help our community, and due to the restrictions of the COVID-19, we were staying at home, but we started late before the reopening of the schools, whereby we help the parents and the children at the end, the schools that are around house to check if the schools are ready to be the water and the sanitizer, as well as the mask are still. So we worked together with the principals of the schools, together with the community. So we visited a number of schools, and we find that the schools, some of them were ready, and some of them were not ready. Those who were not ready, we like working together with the principals of those schools who were not ready to make them ready, and like request what is not available at school so that the school will start to function. So we visited a number of schools, but we work together with the community as well as the parents, because you know as well that the parents were panicking about the reopening of the schools. So we as the leaders, because they were looking upon us to take action, but we try like to calm them down because they were very panicking. But so far, then everything is going well as we speak right now. So our project was like helping the school because due to limited resources, we didn't do much. But as an organization that is based on the community, then that's what we did so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Permission to speak?
I'd like to share. I'd like to share an experience, but I also would like maybe someone else to get a chance before me, as I already spoke before this.
That was Zanele.
Sienna. Okay, I'll speak after Zanele.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay.
Okay, I want to add on what Busiso said. Here in Denhauser, when everyone was worrying about the sickness, us, we were worrying about the food and its cost. And as we are way out of big cities, so no one was seen from around our small town to educate our people about the disease or give them food parcels. So it was up to us as activists to come out and mobilize ourselves in order to assist our communities. So as Denhauser Task Team, we organized ourselves and we use our own small resources from our own pocket just to go house to house of elderly people in our area, just to see if they have enough food and to collect water for them and to educate them about the disease. Kulokhu kwe information okuncane esasinakho. And that made us realize that our government is not doing enough, especially for us in rural areas. So as we speak, there has never been anyone to do the testing or educate our people about this disease. All we know about COVID is from media, and to us, it looks like those are just stats. So as abahlali basemakhaya eDenhauser, we are also surrounded by armor mines, but they did nothing for communities during this period. So yeah, that's what we are experiencing, and those are the difficulties that we are facing as abahlali. Thank you.
Thank you, Zanele. Sianda?
Okay, thank you. So I have a question and a comment. I'll start by asking this question. The government restrictions and as to work opening. I want to ask how big is food since the restrictions are being reduced and people are going back to work and stuff. And the comment is, we in my community, we're still distributing food. We still have food parcels. I just wanted to find out in your guys' communities whether you guys are still doing the food parcels as we are doing here.
Sianda, we missed your question.
That's it.
Sorry, Sianda, we missed the first part of the question.
Okay, can I come again?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay, so my question is, since we are in level 3, the levels have reduced. I wanted to guys find out from you guys how big is the demand for food parcels in your communities, since some people are going back to work and the schools are reopening. That's the question. How big is the demand of food parcels?
Anybody got a response for Sia?
Okay, maybe I can reply to Sia, but we live in almost the same community with him. But the demand is still big. We still have people coming to our offices looking for food parcels. So the school reopening, the people going back to work here, but they are still not yet earned a salary. So there's still a very big demand, and they've lost their jobs. We have given sex workers food. We've given taxi drivers and taxi conductors, so whom they are still like working on a very limited shifts. So they still need. So in totality, there's still a very big demand.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Maliga.
Okay. So, is there anything else? Okay. Well, what I'd like us to maybe take the next 10 minutes to talk about before we have to start winding down this conversation is from where you sit. Oh, sorry, Abdiel, there was a question from you before we move on. Sorry about
no,
that.
I'll wait. No, it's okay. I'll wait. I know time is really limited. If there's a gap, I'll comment at the end. Thank you.
No, I just think we want to wrap up this section before I pose a new question. So if you want to comment into the space now, yeah.
Okay, it was about whether you dealt with other big organizations that didn't need money. I was wanting to respond to that. So I had a very interesting experience, which I'd like to share. Maybe others can help me with this. So it was a very, what I would call a well-established organization, and they collaborated with me to donate food parcels, and it was huge. It was really very helpful. But the interesting part for me was this organization, it wasn't the Baha'is, it was some other organization, I don't want to mention the name, but the organization wanted me to take photos of everyone, take the photos of the kids, take the photos of the food parcels. And it made me feel very uncomfortable because I felt the dignity somehow was not maintained. And the same organization since didn't call me back because it was done very with this, all the safe social distancing, everything was done accordingly. But I just want to know, how would you, for example, now, if I would ask them to give me 1,000 food parcels, they would probably say yes, but I don't want to do things for the sake of marketing. And this is where the thing comes in about, again, giving the fish. I know that there are so many communities that need the food parcels, but how do we maintain the dignity? That was basically my comment and a question in the same time. You don't have to answer it. We can always discuss it at another time. Thanks.
I think that's a very important question. So in these times where dignity is still one of the foundational principles of our work, and when there's a lot of welfare work going on and the welfare is needed, how are we balancing our own practice to make sure that we get the people the things that they need in this emergency, while at the same time protecting and preserving their dignity? Anybody want to make a comment on that?
I'd like to comment on that. Alan, because I think for us, one of the intentional things that we wanted to maintain is also this thing of not just dropping the food, but also having deep conversations with people. And so this is why also it took time. You know, you'd leave at home or from where we're packing food in the morning, and come home close to 9 o'clock or something like that at night back home. But the thing about it was having real conversations. So the connections were important. We're not just giving people food and leaving it at that. So the issue of dignity for me is quite critical, of maintaining the dignity of people and also hearing them out, so that it's not just about us giving them food, but also understanding some of the other issues that they wanted to discuss with us, to share with us, and to be able to say, well, maybe there's something else, or there's someone else who can be able to come in and support you in this particular area, and so on and so forth. So, for instance, in their households where we did not know that there's a disabled persons, so maybe you went in there because you saw that there was absolute poverty in this household, but once you walk in, you find out that there's a sick person or there's a disabled person in that household, and so you have to look at how can you support that particular household to address these other issues that we did not come into to support with.
Okay. Thank you. Michael, did you want to add?
Yeah, I'm debating myself if I'm the right person to make this comment, but also in the dignity part of it. On the first parcel that we made, we never thought of any sanitary towels within the parcel, but because of multi-team members that we had, so there was someone who asked, what about women? Are they going to be able to go and buy their needs and so in our second parcel that we made, we included sanitary towels in it. But also, deliberately, we didn't put to every parcel that we put a pack, but we kept it aside. And when we saw the need, when we saw the household, where they like majority of these people who are living here are women. So then someone will go back to the car and pick and deliver the package. So there are houses where we found men living alone because he has taken kids away because he wanted to remain alone because of hunger. So in that house, we wouldn't deliver any towels. So I'm trying to show the deliberate and the sense of interacting with people and reading the terrain with what is needed. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else who'd like to comment on this issue, this question of preserving dignity in times of crisis?
Simon here. I think that is a tricky issue in a sense that, you know, some of the organizations that were able to make money available for the interventions, they were also thinking in terms of their own needs. And some of these needs would be like maybe they want good publicity, for instance, for the work that they are sponsoring. So I think that is a challenge to us in terms of how we reconcile between these two needs, that the people we are working with have dignity, and also the need of those other organizations to publicize themselves. Take for instance, like the ETV company, or that is linked to ETV, they will show even people receiving those food parcels. To them, it's good because they'll say that is how they are marketing themselves, and they are also encouraging others to. But I think for us as civil society, we just need to maybe share ideas on how we can really address that issue, because it's big, you know. Sometimes you see that there is a need, but that doesn't even qualifies us now to go and take advantage of the people and say, yeah, they can do whatever, like those big organizations want them to do, like taking photos of their houses and showing them all over, and also just, you know, those things. So it's a very tricky matter, comrades, if I may say.
Thank you, Simon. Timbela, there's a comment in the chat box, apparently.
Yes, yeah. It's a comment from Mandla. I think it also relates to what Michael was talking about. And he's saying one of the most touching stories I heard was of the community members who are from organized formations going into communities to fill the gaps that no one else had heard of. They were distributing dignity packages for women who would not have had the opportunity to go to the shops themselves, nor the resources to buy such necessities. It means when the COVID-19 outbreak started, the panic was overwhelming, as was the response efforts. But most of the efforts were directed at food parcels, and none for hygienic essentials for women. It is commendable indeed that the comrades in Pietermaritzburg did not worry about their own health and safety and recognize that there are those with bigger needs. That's from Mandlenkos Hateb.
Thank you. Thank you, Timbela. So we don't have a huge amount of time left. What I'd like to ask is, for those of us who haven't had a chance to talk, is there any comment that you would like to make? Anything that you're sitting with that you think that everybody else needs to hear? And that excludes... Yes, sir.
Yes, I would like to thank the organization like where Dudu and Michael is coming from. They deserve a best for what they did. I think, guys, I'm giving you a verbal award. You did very well. Well, what I've seen since the lockdown occurred, organizations leave aside the political parties and government itself. Civil organizations were on ground assisting people. A person who can't differentiate between civil organization and government will think to restore our dignity during this pandemic, even beyond and before. So my recommend would be say, I think since we can't distribute all what we have to all people, I think the organization could try to force government officials to work together, because it's like they are turning a blind eye on what is happening. By saying so, I'm reflecting on what is happening to my community. I've seen few logistics, like 4 buses, 5 buses. They are the one who were in forefront trying to assist people in the presence of leaders. So I think organizations, they do more beyond their capacity for assisting people. Civil organizations are the one who have got the interest of people at heart. But I think we must try to reinforce our leaders to assist, because they receive a lot of budget. As I'm speaking right now, municipalities are expected to receive 20 billion and so forth. And before that 20 billion, they've done nothing. Even if they receive it, I think they will do nothing, because if you see where, so lockdown will be over soon. What will happen with that amount? I think we must try to engage them to release those funds. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anybody else who hasn't had the chance to speak who'd like to say something?
Yes, I'm interrupting.
Yes,
Hello?
Ripley. Yes,
Can
we
you
can
guys
hear
hear
you.
me?
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
Okay. No, I am only saying that with me, it was in the entire community, but at least we managed to share our food with one family that my mother chose. So, because the reason being, food parcel issues, the food parcel thing, it was then politicized. Then they would tell you that if you're not in the women's league or a card-carrying member of a certain party, then you're not going to get food. So then my mother decided to give this old lady part of the food that we had at home. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you. I think that's a very useful reflection that it's not always about the scale, but it's those true acts of person to person solidarity that is as important as whether we're supporting 5,000 people or not. I think that's a very important reflection for all of us. So we're reaching the point where we're going to have to do a bit of a wrap up. I would really have loved to keep this conversation going for a little bit longer because I think that there's some important energy that we have. So what I'm going to try to do is quite quickly take us through what I've heard. And we will also be making a very short report available to everybody that's been on this call and to others as well. So I think importantly for the example that we heard today, there are a few things that I think are really, really important for us to hold on to. One is the absolute importance of connecting with people. So I think the big decision to go out and to see people and to talk to them in their homes and understand what their needs were was probably the basis for what became a very successful program. So it wasn't sit in our offices and imagine what people needed. It was actually going out and talking to people and actually trying to figure out what their real needs were. The second thing is, out of that is a very strong effort to make sure that people got what they needed. So it wasn't we treat all households the same. It wasn't we treat every single person in exactly the same way. We didn't take this notion of a community as one blob that looks exactly the same, so we can deliver a program that ignores the very particular needs of people. And in this instance, very clearly, the needs of people with disabilities and how that reshaped the way the non-disabilities organization is going to be doing their work in the future, being aware of, conscious of a new and different experience that they maybe wouldn't have had before. So the other one is the realization around the access to sanitary pads. It's targeted, it's well thought through, it's the use of resources in a way that's really, really efficient. I think the words that stood out for me was from the conversation was that the intention was to live, to be true to the values of the organization, that the delivery of what we call charity in the beginning was not what this was about. So we recognize that people are in need, we will give them food, but we worked in a space and in a way that provides the basis for us to be able to build up a long-term response in that community. It allows us to establish the relationships or to build on existing relationships in this instance. And it was really, again, about making sure that people saw solidarity. So the action of coming to your house, the action of being visible, reinforces people's sense of self-worth and does a whole lot of things to strengthen our activities going forward. The words that were used were building people to people connections. The impact was that we were able to connect to people. These were phrases that were used during the conversation. And I think the other thing is that the process also, through talking to people and through engaging with them, potentially that they wouldn't have normally seen, that they now can think about and build into their programming going forward. So this moment of crisis has probably led to a much stronger program, a much more rooted program that allows PACSA, CREATE, and hopefully others in the room to think about the work that they do in a very different way, in a stronger way. The phrase that probably stands for this entire conversation for me is this notion of the power of people together. That it's two organizations coming together, they work together, others see what they're doing, they join, they connect. It's thinking about who is in the communities we work with, how can our programs connect other people to be able to access livelihoods. So the informal transport workers, the small-scale farmers, all of those are really, really important for us to connect whole of community, not just the parts that we think are the most marginalized or the most vulnerable. So we're building solutions that are located in community. It's a very interesting set of phrases. I was critical of food, and I've softened my stance on food parcels. This conversation about that we constantly have about the rod or the fish. And I think what's clear is that in this country and in many, many development situations, we know at certain times it is the fish. In order to save somebody's life, in order to create, once they are stable, a longer process of teaching them to fish. And I mean, to stretch the analogy a little bit further, it's not only fish, it's bread and water and a whole range of other things that we have to also be thinking about. And Dudu's comment about intersectionality, I think, is really pointing us to that, is that we are not engaging in community with individuals that are square blocks. They're complicated. They have multiple needs. They have multiple relationships. And all of our interventions, we constantly have to be thinking about who is it that we're working with, and to adjust our interventions to suit those. The question of sustainability, I think, is a big one, but I think has been answered to some extent in that very few of the organizations that are on this group are drop-in peer type of organizations. They have a consistent presence in community. At this time, they took an extraordinary measure to provide food for the people in that community, but their work will be ongoing and will focus on a whole range of things outside of food and this crisis that people with that we're working in. The question of politics comes up over and over again. The politics between people, who should get it, who doesn't get it, why are you giving to some people and why are you not giving to others? The role of our political leaders or the non-role of our political leaders in providing security for our communities is also one that plays out in this space. But I think that the important lesson from this is that we have to be secure in the criteria that we use when we're delivering social services. So it's not so much that we try to deliver to everybody, but we are clear about why we are giving food parcels or any other service to particular groups of people. That clarity, that ability to explain that to others is far more important than reaching millions and millions of people. So it's that understanding of what you do and why you do it. Some really nice examples of low-cost programming. Interesting focus on WhatsApp, which I think is something we might want to explore in another conversation. And And I think a critical issue that was raised in this discussed today. And I hope you find it useful. If you have any questions, whatever, I don't think that this is a conversation that we want to stop right now. And to say thank you. It's 2 hours that we've reached, and to welcome you to join the future conversations like this. But before we close, I'd just like Ashley to give us a final closing statement, and then we can wrap this conversation up. And I'm really sorry we can't do any feedback, but next time we'll try to make some more time for feedback from all of you. Ashley, closing for us, please.
There's so many reflections that have come up in my mind. I think for me, the biggest one is listening to Dudu and Michael talking about what they did and how they did it. There's two ways in which you can listen. One is, that's an interesting story. The other way of listening is to say, I wonder what I can learn from what they said. That intervention, for me, my takeaway, for example, was this notion of welfare versus, address the root causes, charity versus justice. People are starving, how do you feed them, and at the same time build political consciousness? That was what I learned. It challenged my thinking fundamentally. We've got to open our minds to hearing those challenging points, not just the descriptive part of Michael Malinga fight. I can picture him in Pietermaritzburg fighting with the police, saying, okay, you can't take away my right. This is not a state of emergency. I can go and see my comrades if I want. That's interesting. It makes for interesting listening. We've got to be able to extract the lessons from these discussions. And we're hoping that this will get increasingly better at doing that, particularly at how we manage the technology side of it. So I think you've been our guinea pigs. We've never done such a conversation before. I'm hoping that we will do it even better next time, but I think this has been a great start. So I want to say, ngiyabonga kakhulu. Inkosi. Thank you very much for I think what has been an interesting conversation. And keep watching the spaces that we are going to circulate. We will let you know when the next subject is on, or when the next hub is on, probably in 2 weeks' time. We're still keeping them small. We're not going to resist the temptation to make them big meetings, but we'll see, we'll adapt as we go. So thank you very much. And thank you to the facilitators for a great job.
Thank you, Ashley. And my colleague who led the conversation gets the honor of closing us off. Thank you, Tembela.
Well, I just want to say thanks a lot to Michael and Dudu. They really did a sterling job of sharing their own experiences with us within such a short space of time, and they did it so well. And thanks everyone for joining in. The one thing I just want to say is that
anything.
Oh, we can hear you. I was going to say, you to the participants, you will if you could, you will be getting an email or a call from Ubumbano about how today went, and just to help us evaluate the session and how we could improve it for the future.
Yeah.
Otherwise, thank you so much. Yeah.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for the time. We'll talk again soon.